Hi folks, I'm Doug Reid, and I think you are really going to enjoy owning a new PowerPro headstock. Whether you buy a new Mark 7 or upgrade your existing tools, the difference in quality, performance, and just pure fun is absolutely remarkable. You know folks, one of the problems with power tools has always been that issue of speed versus power. We need to have the right amount of speed for the operation, but we also need to have the right amount of power. Well, those are actually in conflict with each other. What a lot of these single-purpose tool companies have done has just put in bigger and bigger, heavier, heavier, more expensive motors. Well, you get to that situation where the table saws are so large, they're difficult to move around. You have to dedicate a lot of space to them, and of course they are stuck at that one speed. Shopsmith used to use the belt and pulley system, which was a pretty good compromise, but today with the new PowerPro headstock, and let me emphasize, this is new technology. There's nothing else like it out there that I know of. There are some cutting edge companies that are using these in other operations, and you can look that up online. But with a new PowerPro headstock, folks, you get the maximum amount of power delivered to the cutter at the right speed every single time. Now, folks, some of you may recognize this old Shopsmith. This is an old 500, but even this old machine could be upgraded with a new PowerPro headstock upgrade. You know, we need to have the speed, so we have the smoothness of the cut. It helps prevent kickbacks. There's a lot of great reasons to have the high speed, but we sacrifice power. With most power tools, by increasing the size of the motor, it just costs more in efficiency and space. Now, folks, here is a great visual example of what I'm talking about. This is a piece of gnarly old cherry, and you'll notice it has a pretty bad bow on one side. With my old Mark 5 system, I would have had to slow the RPM down and slow my feed rate down, take a chance of kicking back and burning. With the new PowerPro headstock, this just cuts through like it's soft pine. Folks, in this presentation, you're going to see how the new PowerPro, through some very advanced technology, solves those problems. And you're going to see a number of examples of that. Right now you can see a rip cut, and as I'm going through a piece of very tough old cherry, and you'll notice there is no burning, there's no binding, there's no problems, and it goes through very easily. Oops, here is an example of what I'm talking about. This is a piece of hard maple. It tends to burn, it tends to bog down the tool, even stop the tool, and might dim the lights down, whatever, with the old machines. But with the new PowerPro headstock, that combination of power and speed, I can push this through, and seriously, it feels just about like a piece of pine on my old saw. It just zips right through there. But, you know, it's not just the ease of the work and the convenience of this, it is the quality of the work when we're finished. Now, I'm going to hold these two back together, and I hope you can see this. There are no saw marks in that anywhere, and when I put those together, I could actually run a glue joint in there, a couple of clamps, and I'm set to go. So we get both the ease of operation, we get the quality of the cut, and really, it's just an awful lot of fun to work with. Now folks, if you take a look at this cutaway of the headstock, the new motor is nearly twice the size as the old motor, and more importantly, it delivers twice the torque. Folks, this is the old green machine again, and I just like to emphasize that everything on this could be upgraded, and that's one of the great things about Shopsmith, their philosophy, and the way they do business. You could actually convert a 60-year-old machine into a brand new one. Folks, if I look familiar to you, it may be that we've met. I spent nearly 20 years demonstrating and teaching the Shopsmith all over the country for Shopsmith. You know, in that period of time, in all sincerity, I never had anybody say to me, gee, I'm sorry that I bought a Shopsmith. However, what I did hear quite a bit is there any way I can improve the performance? I have trouble with the lights dimming down. I feel like I don't have quite enough power. Sometimes the saw will bog down if I'm trying to do a heavy cut. I can't seem to prevent burning when I'm drilling. Just all those little things that we used to run into. And while we had workarounds, you know, that's exactly what it was a workaround. What I want to show you in the next few minutes is how the new PowerPro headstock just makes the whole Shopsmith experience so much better. This is a completely different tool than you're used to. It's certainly not Granddad's old Shopsmith anymore. So let's have a look. And I want to start off by showing you something not a Shopsmith. Folks, I want to show you something that I discovered kind of by accident. I was trying to trim off the end of a big old heavy piece of oak, prepping it for this video, and I went over to my DeWalt chop saw. Now this is a good saw. It had a nice fresh blade on it, but you may be able to see here that I'm really struggling to get through this. I'm pushing down very hard. I'm having to take multiple cuts, and this is something you can try yourself if you have one of these types of saws. Get a big thick piece of oak or cherry or walnut and see how it handles it. But what I discovered is not only was it a fight, the quality of the cut just wasn't that good. I had burning on the end, and I had chip out and tear out. And honestly, I never like to have to force a saw like that. So just for grins, I took the same piece of wood and took it right over to my Mark V, and I want you to see this. All right, we're setting this up, same piece of wood, set the machine up for cross-cutting, and you will see that it just zips through this. It's just night and day difference. There's just no force there whatsoever. In fact, it almost feels like I'm just cutting a piece of soft pine, and that's that same dense, heavy oak. And you'll see the quality of the cut. There's no burning on the end, absolutely no chip out or tear out that I have to deal with. Vastly, vastly better. And I thought that was just a great example of some of the power and the performance that you get out of this new PowerPro headstock. And what I have decided to do, folks, is sell off my big compound miter saws and just go with my small one, because that handles everything I need. And then for my big, heavy crosscuts, I'll continue to use the Shopsmith. So it's a perfect combination, and I get to sell some tools and buy something different. Folks, another great upgrade. If you decide you'd like to add the double tilt system along with your PowerPro headstock, you now have one of the best shapers that money can buy. I like to use it with a fence as well. This fence is fantastic. I cover that in great detail in another video. But what this gives you is all the power you need, the reversibility so you can cut from both sides and get more use out of your cutters, the safety, the dust collection, everything you want with this setup that makes it just about the best shaping routing setup that money can buy. And of course, the purpose of the double tilt is so you can have the headstock on the other end tilted up in the opposite direction than we're used to. So now the headstock is underneath, and that gives us a much better shaping. With the new PowerPro headstock, you have a speed range between 250 RPM on the low end and 10,000 on the high end, and you get constant torque throughout the entire speed range. So many of those problems have just disappeared. But the other thing I really want to make sure everyone kind of realizes, because I didn't when I first got this, I thought, well, this is great, it's going to upgrade my Mark V, but it actually upgrades every single function of anything that attaches to the Mark V. Whether it's the bandsaw, the joiner, the belt sander, the strip sander, anything that you're going to hook up to the Mark V gets the advantage of that bigger power, better torque, better controls. So it is a huge, huge difference. If you are like me and you decide, yeah, this is right for you, we're going to invite you at the end of this demonstration to order one of these, try it out in your own shop and see what you think about it. But here's something I think you'll really like. Shopsmith has agreed, just through these webinars, to offer special discounts that's going to give you folks some savings. And these savings are only available through these webinars. Well, folks, it is woodworking season. Great time to treat yourself to a new Shopsmith system, or tell your spouse, I'm taking care of your Christmas shopping for you this year. Folks, if you're like me, your table saw is your most used, probably most important tool. And you know, Shopsmith has gone with this new system from really sort of chasing the pack to leading the pack. There's not any other power tool table saw out there quite like this. You still save the space, you have the great big tables for your large projects, you have that variable speed, variable power, and this thing is just a real pleasure to work with. Even ripping heavy hardwoods can now be fun, guys. It really does zip right through it. And folks, I want to show you one more time that rip cut on maple. You know, if you've tried this on your old Shopsmith, you know this can be a struggle. This is a very dense wood. It's prone to burning. If I go too fast, I'm probably going to bog the saw out and maybe trip a circuit breaker. If I go too slow, there's a high likelihood that I'm going to burn. With the new PowerPro, where it's adjusting both the speed and the torque, all those problems simply disappear. And I want you to see the quality of this cut. I can put these two boards back together. There's no saw marks on there, no burning. And when I put those back together, I think you can see, I could very easily put glue in that joint, clamp it up, and have a completely ready to go project just like that. Hi folks, Doug Reid here again, and I wanted to show you one of the many ways that you can use the different table systems if you've upgraded to a 510 or a 520. A lot of times you'll be ripping a long board, and please notice I've got the saw guard removed. It's just for demonstration purposes. I always use a guard when I'm actually cutting. But let's say you're ripping something fairly long here, and you run into this problem. As you pass through and you get to the outfeed side, it's very difficult to control that. It's going to want to get away from you like that. Now, I've heard the complaints that the Shopsmith is inadequate for a table saw, and I really disagree with that. I think the whole problem is people don't understand all the different ways that it can be used. So what I'm going to show you here today is how you can use your existing tables to build a beautiful little outfeed table system. Very simple, very quick to do. Over here I have my extension table. First thing I want to do is remove it and reverse it. So now, folks, what we've done is built a very large outfeed table, bigger than you're going to get on most even commercial table saws. And yet we still are working in a very small amount of space here. But now, as I feed this through, you'll see that becomes a beautiful outfeed table, and that'll let me support up to 4 feet without any problem. I could probably go all the way to 5, maybe even 6 feet, and have the support back there for my longer rip cuts. If I needed support on the in-feed side, I could take another extension table and run it over this way for that kind of support, or I can take 2 of my floating tables and put them on the outfeed side. If I'm cutting plywood, for example, that's going to give me support. So if someone ever tells you that the Mark V is inadequate as a table saw, really what they're telling you is they don't quite understand how to use it. So get a little creative, watch the videos, play with this a little bit, and what you'll find is your Mark V is just one of the finest table saws available today if you've upgraded to the 510 or 520 table system, and especially if you've upgraded to the PowerPro headstock. This is Doug Reid. Thanks for watching. I have always believed that the Shopsmith is the very best drill press that's ever been made for the home woodworker. There's so many features about it, starting with the fact that you do not have to stop the machine and change belts and pulleys like you do with most other tools. You have a much larger table, the variable speed, as I mentioned. You have a 4 1/4 inch depth of cut. You have that big heavy duty rip fence for doing any of your straight line drilling work. You have the ability to angle the table. But now, folks, with the PowerPro, it's even better. You can drill larger holes in more materials. Folks, if you like what you've seen so far, and let's face it, how could you not? This is a great time to order your PowerPro headstock. A little secret for you. Not everybody gets an invitation to these webinars, and the only way you get these discounts is by attending this webinar. So you have a special opportunity that not everyone is getting to save money. Try one out for 90 days. See what you think. Now, folks, if you're like me, you may have to run this decision through someone else, a spouse, for example. And before I got the PowerPro, I was thinking about upgrading to a new lathe, and I was looking at spending between $3,000 and $5,000 for that lathe. My wife Susan has always been great about supporting my woodworking, and she's a woodworker too. But honestly, that one raised her eyebrows a little bit. And I talked to her about it. I said, you know, I think I can get exactly what I want if I upgrade to the new PowerPro, and that will run under $2,000. Well, obviously, she liked that idea. So that's a thought for you. If you do have to talk to somebody else, there can be some really good arguments for upgrading to this new system. You still save the space, but you get a vastly better tool, safer tool, easier to work with. Guys, this new lathe is the other thing besides the table saw and joiner that is, to me, just absolutely noticeably different. You know, in the old Shopsmith, it was close to being a direct drive, and if you caught a chisel, you could have a big catch. That problem simply goes away now with the new PowerPro. Remember that the computer is reading and adjusting the requirements for the operation that you're doing at a rate of 400 times a second. So it makes the turning much, much easier. And there's really 2 places in turning where this does become very important. One is when you're first turning, roughing something out, but the other one is at the end of the turning, and you're finishing off that bowl. I may have spent 3 or 4 hours on a bowl, and I get down to that last little refining cut, and if I happen to catch the chisel wrong, I could tear out a big chunk of wood or even break the bowl. The PowerPro, I'm not going to tell you that you can get silly careless with this, but if you do happen to catch the chisel, it's going to minimize the damage because the PowerPro will cut out. And you probably wouldn't even notice it if someone hadn't pointed it out to you, but once you're aware of it, you will see that. There's also a soft start going on here, which minimizes vibration. You know, folks, the fact that the new PowerPro headstock is reversible, of course, is a big advantage when you're doing shaping work, and it's one of the main purposes of it. But the other thing that I found is when I'm sanding, especially on the lathe, it makes such a difference when I'm sanding and finishing to have that reversibility. I can sand in one direction, stop the machine, sand in the other direction, and do the same with my finish. And what I find is the quality of my finish is much better and it's easier to do. So if you like to get your sanding done as quickly and easily as possible, this is something else you're really going to like about this new system. Folks, let's talk about using the PowerPro for the joiner and the table saw. This is where your power requirements are at their max. And having the ability to run these two tools together is just a great advantage, I think. You can basically stand in one place, hook your headstock up to both the joiner and the table saw, and this is going to allow you to joint and rip your boards back and forth in preparation. So it saves time. But it's also great with the PowerPro because you have the smoothness of the cut, you have the muscle to get through whatever operation that you might be needing to do there without any slowing down. Now, one thing, folks, you will notice, I cut my boards down to about 3¼ inches wide, no matter what project that I'm doing. The reason for that, I've learned both from my experience and from my other readings and talking to people, if you leave your boards wide, 6, 8, 10, 12 inches wide, there's a high likelihood of those boards cupping or cracking. By taking them down to 3½ inches or so, jointing them and gluing them back together, you're going to get a much more stable project, much less likely to warp, cup, and cause you problems like that. And if you do it carefully, that seam will be nearly invisible, so you shouldn't have any visual issues with it as well. So that's what I'm doing here. I joint one edge, I take that jointed edge, run that through the table saw with that jointed edge up against the rip fence, and then I joint the edge that I just cut on the saw. I will flatten one surface using the joiner, and again, this is where you'll really notice the muscle of this joiner. This is a hard piece of oak that I'm cleaning up here. And then at some point in this operation, I'll also take it over to my thickness planer to dimension it for the proper thickness. Folks, you always want to use your safety gear, push blocks, push sticks, make sure that you're really paying attention here. This is one tool that I really like to emphasize the need for being careful. You notice where my feet are placed, I'm up even with the cutter head, and I transfer the weight across there, and that just works absolutely excellent. It's a noticeable difference from the old headstock. Now here's something that I find just absolutely fascinating. If I want to convert my PowerPro headstock that comes with a 110 system to a 220 volt system, all I have to do is change out the plug and it's ready to plug into a 220 volt receptacle. Change out the plug on the end of the cord, get 30% more torque. Personally, I think that's just amazing. Folks, here's another very good visual example of the benefits of the new PowerPro headstock. You know, resawing on any bandsaw has always been a challenge, and I think the Shopsmith, even the old one, is better than most. But with the new PowerPro headstock, you have that double torque out there, and it just lets us power through these resaw cuts. I have a separate video on how to set the fence for doing resawing. You'll notice that the fence is skewed there, and you need to understand that process before you try to do a rip cut or a resaw with your bandsaw. And take a look at that video and you'll get the idea. I mentioned here I should be using a push stick. Let me emphasize that. As I watch this, it kind of makes me unhappy with what I did here. Honestly, I'm very careful with what I do, but I'm showing it to someone else. I don't want to get anybody into trouble. But what I do want you to see is the consistency of this cut. You can put a micrometer on that piece of wood when it's finished, and end to end and edge to edge, you'll find that will be easily under 1/100 of an inch difference, and that's about the thickness of a playing card, and for my woodworking that works just great. An awful lot of uses for being able to resaw. You can make boxes and baskets and toys and a lot of craft work, but you need to be able to thin that wood out. I want to show you one more quick cut. This is really the right way to set it up with a push stick and a featherboard. And I am cutting through maple here. And folks, this is set down to about the 32nd of an inch cut. You save an awful lot of wood if you can do accurate resawing. And I've never seen any other bandsaw that will handle it as well as a Shopsmith, and even better now with a PowerPro. And everyone that I have talked to has been very happy that they've upgraded to this new product. Folks, learning to use the equipment is very quick and very intuitive. I'm not going to give you a lot of detail because I don't want to spoil the fun of you learning for yourself. It is fun to play with. But here's just a quick overview. You have an on button and off button. You have your speeds that correspond to the existing speeds that you're used to using. But instead of having to turn the dial up and down every time, you simply push the button. The up and down buttons are to let you fine tune it. It also lets you pick your different operations. You have a lock button, and the lock button is designed to keep people out of it. You have a chart button, which will let you pick exactly the operation, confirm for safety, and of course forward and reverse. Very, very easy to work with. The default position is 500 RPM forward. You have a lock button in order to keep people locked out if you want to. A chart button where you can pick your operations, confirm for safety, and of course forward and reverse. That's pretty intuitive. Now, as we go through this, what you'll see is it just makes sense. It is intuitive. You don't have to give a lot of thought to it or spend hours scratching your head trying to figure out the manuals. So folks, to summarize, the PowerPro gives us more power, easy 220 volt conversion. It's quieter, it's easier to use, it's safer. It's really a high-tech machine. It's more efficient. There's 4 different price points, and I think it's the best upgrade ever. Folks, if you get the PowerPro headstock, all of your accessories that attach to the Mark V are going to perform better. And if you want to get your best price, use the easy order form that you just got in your email. Folks, I hope that you will join me and thousands of other Shopsmith owners that have decided to invest in the new PowerPro headstock. You know, folks, sometimes I like to reflect on why we got a Shopsmith in the first place, and for a lot of us it's about saving space. But as we use the tools, we realize what a phenomenal tool, what a phenomenal company this has been, and it continues to be. It's a world leader. I'm proud to own one, proud to represent it. Thanks again for watching. And folks, these webinars are brought to you in cooperation and support of Shopsmith Incorporated. However, I like to point out I am an independent contractor. My opinions and techniques are my own. Folks, I will always give you my best honest opinion and the best answers that I possibly can. You can contact me anytime at shopsmithdoug@gmail.com, and I will answer your questions or return a phone call. Folks, I'll be live with you here in about 5 seconds.